Hey everybody, this is Dr. Arie VandeWaa at the University of South Alabama. I'm the professor of trombone and music business here at USA, and you're listening to the 2020 All-State Middle School Technical Commentary Podcast. So first off, I mentioned this in the other podcast as well. Make sure you have the right edition of the right book, right, so that you're playing the exact etude they want, exactly the way they want. Next, note that while there are no repeats at the end of each line, there is a DC al fine that goes back to the top line and finishes the tune out. So make sure you follow that all the way through, right? And again, just follow the instructions as they're laid out in the All-State packet. Additionally, please make sure that you remember that the tempo that's printed, the tempo that I recorded at, these are suggested tempos, right? This may be a little fast for you, especially if you're in 6th or 7th grade. This may be very, very challenging to play it at that speed. So take your time, relax, and focus on playing this in a comfortable tempo that you can control and show off basically all the right stuff, right? Good dynamics, good intonation, good sense of pulse, all of that. Just make sure your time is steady and controlled, even if it's not as fast as it says. Speaking of dynamics, much like in the lyrical, dynamics are a big part of this etude, right? The first line is printed at forte, the second line at mezzo forte with a diminuendo, and then the third line, piano. So really, really create good distinctions between those three levels of dynamics as you play. For those of you playing trombones without F attachments, so without a trigger, I highly recommend that you actually play the Fs in measure 1 in 6th position, so that you can keep up with a faster tempo. And again, you don't have to go all the way up to dotted half note equals 72, but you want to be able to be nimble, right, as you move through this. And if you're going all the way from 6 to 1, that can be really hard to do. So utilize that alternate position to help you get through this and get it at a faster tempo. Additionally, make sure you note the key change on the third line, right, and that you're keeping up with that. And when it goes back to the top, when it does the DC al fine, that it changes back to the original key signature. Also, let's talk a little bit about articulation. Generally speaking, it's staccato, right? But there are some moments where it's slurred. So first off, make sure you're very, very picky about following the instructions on the staccato versus slurred part, right? Don't play slurred notes short. Don't play staccato notes too long. One thing to note, too, with staccato that you have to be careful of, if you get too short, it gets kind of spitty. It gets a little bit uncharacteristic, right? It starts to sound and we don't like that either. So remember, staccato is not a heavy or aggressive articulation. It's just a light articulation with some space between the notes, okay? So it should always feel easy and sound easy, even when it's hard, right? For the slurred notes, I prefer to natural slur when possible, which a natural slur is just like a lip slur, but the slide changes positions, right? If you don't natural slur, that's fine. Or if you can't, just make sure that you use an appropriate legato tongue. Like I said a second ago, follow the instructions on the page very, very rigidly, right? That's what they're really testing you on, is can they follow the instructions exactly as it appears in the page. The slide coordination on the third line can be really tricky, all right? And it's already kind of tricky because it's piano, right? And sometimes playing quietly is even harder than playing loud. So I strongly recommend that you slow that way, 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 way down, especially at first, until you're really comfortable with it. And maybe even take out the tongue entirely when you practice, right? Gliss your way through it, or again, if you're a euphonium player, you're probably not worried about that anyway. But make sure that you're getting it to a point where you really know exactly which note is coming next, and you can anticipate it, and you have plenty of time to think between notes, and then speed it up, all right? Slow practice can yield very, very, very fast results if you actually take the time and play through it slowly, okay? One thing you want to make sure you do early on, too, is that you want to get a metronome involved, all right? I know a lot of students that either don't like to use metronomes because it makes it more challenging, or it's just another thing, right? It's another app to use and set up. It's sometimes just not fun, right, to do metronome practice. But the earlier you start doing it, the better your sense of time and pulse is going to be, and the more that's going to yield really, really big dividends in playing something at faster speeds, right? You're building up a body rhythm, essentially, when you play, especially for trombone, since you have to get the forearm involved so much. But even with the fingers, if you're playing baritone euphonium, you want that sense of timing to be correct, and the best way you're going to get that is to do a lot of metronome practice. For me, it helps, and you can hear this in the recording, to put a little bit of an accent on every downbeat to kind of keep things moving and help feel the piece in 1 rather than in 3, right? Again, you'll notice that the tempo, it's got dotted half note equals 72. So that means that we feel it as 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, rather than 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, if you know what I mean. So make sure that you have just a little bit of an accent and a little bit of an emphasis on beat 1 of every measure to help keep it kind of light and dance-like, right? Just like with the lyrical, and I mentioned it in that video as well, it's a really good idea, if you can, to either have a friend or a band director or yourself record the accompaniment line. And you should have access to the accompaniment line because, again, it's printed as a duet, and then play along with it. And like I mentioned in the other video, this is really good for just helping you have a better understanding of the harmony of the piece, which can help your pitch. It can also help your sense of time on some of the difficult passages, especially the times where it's quarter notes underneath and then eighth notes on the top voice. This can help you stay honest and stay true to exactly what the music is asking you to do. And it's even a fun recording project if you do it yourself, by the way. It's kind of a blast. So, all right, well, this has been the Allstate Technical Commentary Podcast. If you have any questions, by the way, feel free to send me an email at ajvandewaa@southalabama.edu. Thanks, guys.